On a crisp autumn morning, the air carried a slight chill and the sun cast long shadows across the parking lot of Prestige Motors, one of the most exclusive car dealerships in the city. Inside the showroom, everything gleamed: spotless floors, polished cars, and salespeople dressed to impress. But outside, leaning casually against a bench near the entrance, stood Marcus Langley. To anyone passing by, he looked like just another ordinary man. His jeans were faded, his sneakers scuffed, and his baseball cap pulled low over his face. No one would have guessed that this unassuming figure was one of the wealthiest self-made billionaires in the country. Marcus wasn't there for publicity or to flaunt his wealth. In fact, he had deliberately chosen to dress down for the day. For years, he'd grown tired of being treated differently because of his status. Everywhere he went, people fawned over him, bending backward to accommodate his every need. This time, he wanted to experience something rare: anonymity. He wanted to see how the world treated him when they didn't know who he was. With a quiet determination, he walked into the dealership, ready to test the waters. As soon as he stepped inside, the atmosphere shifted, or rather, it didn't shift at all. The staff barely glanced at him. At the front desk, a young receptionist sat scrolling through her phone, her headset dangling loosely around her neck. When she finally looked up, her eyes flickered over Marcus's casual attire before dismissing him entirely. Without missing a beat, she waved him off with an impatient gesture. "Could you wait outside? We're busy with some serious clients." "Right now," she said curtly, already turning her attention back to her screen. Marcus raised an eyebrow but said nothing. He wasn't offended, not yet anyway. Instead, he found himself intrigued by the situation. It wasn't often that someone told him to wait outside, especially not in places where people usually bent over backward to please him. Curious to see how things would unfold, he stepped back out and took a seat on the bench near the entrance. From there, he could observe the comings and goings of the dealership without drawing too much attention to himself. The dealership buzzed with activity. A group of well-dressed customers strolled through the showroom, admiring the rows of gleaming luxury vehicles. Salespeople hovered nearby, their smiles wide and practiced, eager to close deals worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Marcus watched, as one salesman enthusiastically pointed out features of a sleek red sports car to a couple clearly smitten with its design. Another employee ushered a family toward a massive SUV, extolling its safety features and spacious interior. Everyone seemed absorbed in their tasks, completely oblivious to the man sitting quietly outside. Inside, whispers began to circulate among the staff about the stranger loitering near the entrance. One of the junior salesmen, a cocky young man named Ryan, leaned against a desk and chuckled. "Did you see that guy outside? What's he even doing here? He looks like he wandered in from the wrong side of town," he joked, earning a few snickers from his colleagues. Another employee chimed in. "Probably just window shopping. Let's focus on the real buyers." Their dismissive attitude only fueled Marcus's curiosity. He knew exactly what kind of impression he was making, or rather failing to make, and while part of him felt amused by the irony of the situation, another part couldn't help but feel disappointed. He had built his entire career on hard work, resilience, and treating others with respect, regardless of their background. Yet, here he was, judged solely on his appearance and dismissed without a second thought. Time ticked by slowly as Marcus continued to observe. Occasionally, someone would glance his way, perhaps wondering why he hadn't left yet. But no one approached him. No one offered him so much as a glass of water or a polite greeting. The longer he sat there, the more apparent it became that the staff had written him off entirely. They assumed he wasn't worth their time, that he couldn't possibly afford the cars they were selling. What they didn't realize was that Marcus wasn't just any customer. He was the kind of person who could buy the entire dealership if he wanted to. Despite the lack of attention, Marcus remained calm and collected. He wasn't angry, at least not yet. Instead, he found himself reflecting on the nature of judgment and perception. How often did people make assumptions based on appearances? How many opportunities were missed because someone didn't fit the expected mold? These questions swirled in his mind as he continued to watch the scene unfold before him. Eventually, Marcus decided to pass the time by taking out his phone. Scrolling through social media, he came across a photo of a shiny black convertible, parked just a few feet away from where he sat. There was something about the car that caught his eye, not just its sleek design, but the memories it evoked. Decades ago, when Marcus was just starting out, he had purchased a similar model with the last of his savings. It had been a symbol of hope, a reminder that he was capable of achieving greatness despite the odds stacked against him. Smiling faintly, he snapped a picture of the car and posted it online with a simple caption. "Sometimes people judge you by what you wear instead of who you are. Just waiting my turn." Little did Marcus know, those words would set off a chain reaction that would change everything. For him, for the staff inside the dealership, and for the reputation of Prestige Motors itself. As the post gained traction, the staff inside remained, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing just beyond their polished showroom doors. Inside the dealership, the atmosphere was electric with activity. The showroom sparkled under bright lights, each car meticulously arranged to catch the eye of potential buyers. Salespeople moved with purpose, their polished shoes clicking against the spotless floor as they ushered clients from one vehicle to the next. It was a scene designed to exude luxury and exclusivity, a place where dreams of speed, power, and status came to life. But amidst all the glitz and glamour, no one seemed to notice or care about the man sitting quietly outside. At the center of the chaos was Greg Sanders, the dealership's manager. A tall, broad-shouldered man in his late 40s, Greg prided himself on running a tight ship. He paced back and forth across the showroom, clipboard in hand, barking instructions to his team. "Keep those customers engaged," he snapped at one of the junior salesmen. "And for heaven's sake, stop slouching. This isn't a garage sale." His voice carried an edge of desperation, fueled by the pressure to meet monthly sales targets. Every deal mattered, and Greg wasn't about to let anything or anyone get in the way. Around him, the staff buzzed like worker bees, each focused on their own tasks. Near the front desk, a young receptionist named Lisa sat scrolling through, her phone only half paying attention to the comings and goings around her. Earlier, when Marcus had walked in, she had barely glanced up before dismissing him. Now she occasionally peeked out the window, wondering why the man hadn't left yet. "What's his deal?" she muttered under her breath, more annoyed than curious. To her, he was just another distraction, an inconvenience she didn't have time for. Further into the showroom, Ryan, one of the top-performing salesmen, held court with a group of colleagues. Known for his charm and quick wit, Ryan thrived in environments like this, where high stakes and big egos collided. He leaned casually against a display table, regaling his co-workers with stories of past victories. "You've got to read people," he said smugly, gesturing toward a family inspecting an SUV. "See that guy? He's here for the leather seats and heated steering wheel. Classic suburban dad move." His audience laughed, but Ryan's expression turned mocking when someone mentioned the man waiting outside. "Oh, you mean hat guy?" he scoffed, rolling his eyes. "Please, if he can't even dress like he belongs here, why waste our time? He's probably just some looky-loo who wandered in off the street." The comment earned a few chuckles, reinforcing the unspoken assumption that the stranger posed no threat to their bottom line. After all, Prestige Motors catered to a very specific clientele. Wealthy individuals who could afford to drop six figures on a car without batting an eye. Someone in jeans and sneakers clearly didn't fit the profile. As the morning wore on, the staff grew increasingly preoccupied with their own agendas. One salesman eagerly pitched a silver coupe to a middle-aged businessman, while another guided a young couple toward a flashy convertible. Deals were being negotiated, test drives scheduled, and contracts signed. The hum of conversation blended with the occasional revving of engines as customers tested acceleration outside. Everyone seemed laser-focused on closing sales, completely oblivious to the growing tension brewing just beyond the glass doors. Meanwhile, Marcus remained seated on the bench outside, his presence almost forgotten. Occasionally, someone inside would glance his way, perhaps wondering if he intended to leave anytime soon. But no one made a move to approach him. Instead, they continued to treat him as invisible, assuming he was harmless, a mere speck on the periphery of their world. What they failed to realize was that Marcus wasn't just observing the cars, he was studying them, their interactions, their attitudes, their priorities. And what he saw troubled him deeply. The dismissive behavior of the staff spoke volumes about the culture within the dealership. Arrogance masked as confidence, judgment disguised as professionalism. These weren't isolated incidents. They were symptoms of a larger problem. Marcus had built his empire on principles of humility, hard work, and respect for others, regardless of their background or appearance. Yet here, in this temple of luxury, those values seemed glaringly absent. People were reduced to stereotypes, judged not by their character but by the clothes they wore or the cars they drove. It was a stark reminder of how easy it was to lose sight of humanity in pursuit of profit. Back inside, the cracks in the facade began to show. Despite the outward appearance of success, tensions simmered beneath the surface. Greg's constant micromanaging grated on the nerves of his employees, many of whom resented his overbearing leadership style. Lisa, the receptionist, felt undervalued and overworked, her contributions dismissed as menial. Even Ryan, for all his bravado, harbored insecurities about meeting his sales quota. The pressure to perform created a toxic environment where kindness and empathy took a backseat to competition and ego. Unbeknownst to any of them, their actions, or lack thereof, were about to come under intense scrutiny. Outside, Marcus scrolled through his phone, watching as his seemingly innocent social media post gained traction. Comments poured in, ranging from supportive messages to outraged exclamations. Fans recognized him instantly, flooding the thread with disbelief and anger over how he had been treated. News outlets picked up the story, speculating about which dealership had committed such a monumental blunder. Within minutes, the hashtag #RespectEveryone began trending online, sparking debates about classism and prejudice in customer service. Inside the dealership, however, life went on as usual. For now. The staff remained blissfully unaware of the storm gathering outside their pristine showroom. They joked, argued, and hustled, convinced that they were untouchable. What they didn't realize was that their assumptions about the man outside were about to be shattered, and with them, the illusion of control they clung to so desperately. For Marcus, the experience was both fascinating and disheartening. He had set out that morning hoping to reconnect with the simplicity of his early days, to remind himself of the importance of staying grounded. Instead, he found himself face to face with the harsh realities of human nature. Judgment based on appearances wasn't unique to this dealership. It was a universal flaw, one that transcended industries and social circles. Yet seeing it play out firsthand, especially in such a blatant manner, left a bitter taste in his mouth. Still, Marcus wasn't ready to intervene. Not yet. He wanted to see how far things would go, how long it would take for the staff to realize their mistake. In the meantime, he continued to observe, his mind racing with thoughts of accountability, fairness, and the power of perception. Little did he know, the next chapter of this story would unfold sooner than expected, and it would change everything. As Marcus sat outside on the bench, scrolling through his phone and observing the bustling activity inside the dealership, he couldn't help but notice how quickly his social media post began to gain traction. The photo of the sleek black convertible, paired with his cryptic caption, had struck a chord with his followers. Comments started pouring in almost immediately. Some curious, others outraged, and many expressing disbelief at what they assumed was blatant disrespect. "Wait, is this real? Are you serious right now?" One fan wrote, their tone dripping with indignation. "This is insane. Who treats anyone like that? Billionaire or not, everyone deserves basic respect." Another chimed in. Within minutes, the post went viral. Fans recognized Marcus instantly, thanks to his signature baseball cap and the subtle smirk in the photo. Speculation ran wild as people tried to figure out which dealership had made such a colossal mistake. Screenshots of the post spread across platforms like wildfire, accompanied by hashtags like #RespectEveryone and classism exposed. News outlets jumped on the story, eager to uncover the details behind the viral incident. Reporters scrambled to identify the location of the dealership based on clues in the background of Marcus's photo. The distinctive logo on the building, the layout of the parking lot, even the make and model of the cars visible in the frame. Inside the dealership, however, none of this registered yet. Oblivious to the digital storm brewing online, the staff continued going about their day as if nothing unusual was happening. Ryan, the arrogant salesman who had earlier mocked Hat Guy, was now deep in conversation with a potential buyer. He gestured dramatically toward a silver sports car, listing off its features with practiced enthusiasm. Lisa, the receptionist, scrolled absent-mindedly through her phone, occasionally glancing up to greet customers walking in. Greg, the manager, paced anxiously between clients, sweat forming on his brow as he checked his watch repeatedly. But then the first ripple of awareness hit. A young intern working at a nearby desk received a notification on her phone, a screenshot of Marcus's viral post shared by a friend. At first, she thought it was just another meme or joke. But when she looked closer at the image, her eyes widened in shock. "Oh my God," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. She zoomed in on the photo, recognizing the black convertible parked just outside the showroom window. Then she glanced toward the entrance and saw Marcus still sitting there, calm and composed, as though nothing extraordinary was happening. Without hesitation, the intern grabbed her phone and showed the post to Lisa, the receptionist. "Is that him?" she stammered, pointing toward the man outside. Lisa squinted at the screen, her face pale with disbelief. "No way," she murmured, shaking her head. "That can't be." But even as she denied it, doubt crept into her mind. She turned to look at Marcus again, suddenly noticing the resemblance. His posture, his hat, it all matched perfectly. Panic began to spread like wildfire. The intern rushed over to Ryan, interrupting his sales pitch mid-sentence. "You need to see this," she hissed, shoving her phone into his hands. Ryan frowned as he read the post, his confident demeanor faltering. "What the hell?" he muttered, his voice barely audible. He glanced nervously toward the entrance, where Marcus remained seated, seemingly unaware of the chaos unfolding inside. For once, Ryan was at a loss for words. By now, other employees had caught wind of the situation. Phones buzzed incessantly as notifications flooded in from various social media apps. Someone shouted, "That guy outside is Marcus Langley." The name sent shockwaves through the room. Employees froze in place, their faces a mix of horror and disbelief. Whispers erupted everywhere. "Are you kidding me? That's Marcus Langley? The Marcus Langley? We told him to wait outside? Oh my God, we're dead. This is a nightmare. We're going viral, for all the wrong reasons." Greg, the manager, felt the tension rising and demanded answers. "What's going on?" he barked, striding over to the group huddled around the intern's phone. When someone finally explained the situation, his face turned ashen. "Are you telling me we dismissed Marcus Langley?" he asked, his voice cracking under the weight of realization. He spun around, looking toward the entrance, where Marcus still sat patiently on the bench. How could this happen? Why didn't anyone recognize him? The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Here was one of the wealthiest men in the country, sitting quietly outside while they hustled to impress less significant clients inside. The sheer absurdity of the situation would have been comical if it weren't so catastrophic. Panic gripped the staff as they realized the magnitude of their error. Not only had they insulted a billionaire, but they had also done so publicly, in a way that millions of people were now witnessing online. Desperate to salvage the situation, Greg sprang into action. He straightened his tie, smoothed down his hair, and marched toward the entrance. Pushing open the glass door, he stepped outside, his heart pounding in his chest. Marcus was still there, leaning back against the bench, scrolling through his phone with an air of detached amusement. Greg swallowed hard before forcing a smile onto his face. "Mr. Langley," Greg called out, his voice laced with forced cheerfulness. "Please forgive us. We had no idea it was you. Please come back inside so we can assist you properly." Marcus looked up slowly, his expression unreadable. For, A moment he simply stared at Greg, letting the silence stretch uncomfortably. Inside, the staff watched anxiously through the windows, holding their breath as they waited for his response. Finally, Marcus stood up, brushing imaginary dust off his jeans. Without saying a word, he followed Greg back into the showroom, his presence commanding immediate attention. The entire staff fell silent as Marcus entered. All eyes were on him, their faces a mixture of fear, guilt, and awe. Some employees shifted uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact, while others tried to muster smiles that came off as painfully awkward. Greg led Marcus to a plush seating area near the center of the showroom, motioning for him to sit. "Can I get you something to drink, Mr. Langley?" Greg offered, his voice trembling slightly. "Coffee? Water? Anything at all?" Marcus waved him off dismissively. "No, thank you," he said calmly, his tone measured but firm. He scanned the room, taking in the sea of nervous faces before speaking. "I didn't come here looking for special treatment," he began, his words cutting through the tense atmosphere like a knife. "I came here because I wanted to buy a car, but instead of being greeted with professionalism and courtesy, I was told to wait outside, and not just by one person, by your entire team." His gaze swept over the staff, pausing briefly on Ryan, who squirmed under the weight of his stare. "You judged me based on what I was wearing," Marcus continued, his voice growing firmer. "You assumed I wasn't worth your time because I didn't fit some preconceived notion of what a customer should look like. That kind of behavior isn't just unprofessional, it's disrespectful. It's lazy, and it tells me everything I need to know about how you treat people who don't walk in here with a Rolex on their wrist or a designer suit on their back." The room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. No one dared to speak or even move. The weight of Marcus's words hung heavy in the air, leaving the staff visibly shaken. They knew he was right. Every dismissive comment, every rolled eye, every assumption, they all came rushing back in a flood of regret. Greg, desperate to make amends, stepped forward. "Mr. Langley, please allow us to rectify this situation," he pleaded. "We'll do whatever it takes to ensure you leave satisfied. Whatever car you want, consider it yours. Just tell us what you'd like." Marcus raised a hand, silencing Greg mid-sentence. "It's not about the car," he said firmly. "This isn't about me, it's about how you treat people. Respect isn't something you reserve for those you think deserve it. It's something you give to everyone, because everyone deserves it." With that, Marcus stood up and walked toward the exit, leaving the staff stunned and speechless. As he stepped outside, the reality of what had just happened began to sink in. The dealership had narrowly avoided complete disaster, but the damage was already done. Their reputation was in tatters, their egos bruised, and their future uncertain. What they didn't realize yet was that Marcus wasn't finished with them, not by a long shot. As Marcus stepped outside the dealership, the weight of the situation settled heavily on the shoulders of everyone inside. The staff stood frozen, their faces pale with a mix of fear and disbelief. Greg, the manager, felt his stomach churn as he replayed Marcus's words in his mind. "Respect isn't something you reserve for those you think deserve it. It's something you give to everyone." Those simple yet powerful sentences echoed like thunder, leaving an indelible mark on the room. For a moment no one spoke. The silence was deafening, broken only by the occasional buzz of phones lighting up with notifications about the viral post. Greg finally broke the stillness, his voice strained but authoritative. "Everyone, gather around," he barked, gesturing toward the center of the showroom. His employees shuffled nervously into a loose circle, their eyes darting between each other and the entrance where Marcus had just exited. Some looked guilty, others angry, at themselves, at Ryan, at the circumstances, but all were unified by one overwhelming emotion: dread. "This is bad," Greg began, pacing back and forth like a caged animal. "This is really, really bad. We've got news outlets calling this a PR disaster, and our corporate office will be breathing down our necks any minute now. If we don't fix this, and fast, we might as well start cleaning out our desks." The gravity of his words hit home. Lisa, the receptionist, clutched her phone tightly, her knuckles white. She remembered how casually she had dismissed Marcus earlier, waving him off without a second thought. Now she couldn't shake the image of his calm, piercing gaze as he addressed them. It wasn't anger that scared her. It was disappointment. Somehow that felt worse. Ryan, the arrogant salesman who had mocked Marcus earlier, slumped against a display table, his usual bravado replaced by shame. He replayed his own words in his head. If he can't even dress like someone who belongs. Here, why waste our time? They sounded cruel now, hollow and judgmental. He glanced at his coworkers, expecting blame or accusations, but instead found mirrored expressions of guilt. Everyone had played a part in this fiasco, even if indirectly. We need to call corporate, Greg announced firmly, pulling out his phone. They'll want to know exactly what happened before the story blows up even more. He dialed the number with trembling hands, bracing himself for the inevitable backlash. On the other end of the line, the regional director answered almost immediately, her tone clipped and urgent. Greg, I assume you're aware of the situation? She asked, not bothering with pleasantries. Yes, ma'am, Greg replied, swallowing hard. We're working on damage control right now. But there's something else. Mr. Langley himself is involved. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. Marcus Langley? Are you sure? The director asked, her voice rising slightly. Absolutely, Greg confirmed grimly. He was here today, and let's just say, it didn't go well. After a tense pause, the director instructed Greg to document every detail of the incident and prepare for an emergency meeting with upper management. This isn't just your problem anymore, she warned. It's ours. Corporate headquarters wants answers and solutions by tomorrow morning. Hanging up the phone, Greg turned back to his team. Corporate is sending investigators tomorrow. In the meantime, we need to figure out what we're going to do to make this right. Suggestions? For once, Ryan spoke up, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. Maybe we should reach out to Mr. Langley directly, apologize again, offer him whatever he wants, a free car, VIP service, anything. Lisa nodded hesitantly. Yeah, but it's not just about him. People saw how we treated him. Everyone knows now. We can't just sweep this under the rug. Greg rubbed his temples, feeling the pressure mounting. You're right. This isn't just about fixing things with Mr. Langley. It's about proving to the world that we're better than this, that we've learned from our mistakes. Over the next hour, the team brainstormed ideas, their initial panic giving way to a fragile sense of determination. They decided to draft a formal apology letter to Marcus, outlining their regret and promising concrete steps to improve customer service. They also agreed to implement mandatory training sessions on inclusivity and professionalism for all staff members. But deep down, they knew apologies and promises wouldn't be enough. Not when millions of people had already seen the viral post. Meanwhile, outside the dealership, Marcus climbed into his chauffeur-driven SUV, his thoughts swirling. He hadn't intended for the day to escalate into such a public spectacle, but neither could he ignore the lessons it revealed. The dismissive attitudes of the staff weren't unique to this dealership. They were symptoms of a broader issue. Judgment based on appearances was pervasive, and while it was easy to condemn individuals, real change required systemic action. That evening, Marcus called a trusted advisor, explaining the events of the day. Together, they devised a plan. First, Marcus would contact the corporate headquarters of Prestige Motors to demand accountability, not just for the staff involved, but for the culture that allowed such behavior to thrive. Second, he would use his platform to highlight the importance of treating everyone with dignity, regardless of their outward appearance. Finally, he resolved to purchase the black convertible he had admired earlier, but not without negotiating a steep discount as compensation for the poor treatment he endured. The following morning, corporate executives arrived at the dealership, their faces grim as they reviewed security footage and interviewed employees. By midday, decisions were made. Ryan, whose comments had epitomized the dealership's dismissive attitude, was fired on the spot. Greg, the manager, was demoted to a junior role pending further evaluation. Other staff members received formal warnings and were enrolled in intensive training programs focused on empathy and customer service. News of these actions spread quickly, both within the company and beyond. While some praised the swift response, others argued it was too little, too late. Social media remained ablaze, with commentary, much of it critical of the dealership's handling of the situation. Yet amidst the outrage, a quieter conversation emerged, one about the dangers of snap judgments and the value of seeing people for who they truly are. Back at the dealership, the remaining staff worked tirelessly to rebuild trust. Flyers were distributed promoting new initiatives aimed at fostering inclusivity and respect. A hotline was established for customers to report instances of bias or mistreatment. Slowly, painfully, the dealership began the long process of repairing its tarnished reputation. And Marcus? He drove away in his newly purchased convertible, satisfied that justice had been served, but more importantly, hopeful that the incident would spark meaningful change. As he navigated the winding roads, he reflected on the day's events. Respect, he realized, wasn't just a principle. It was a choice, one that required constant vigilance and effort. And though the road ahead would undoubtedly be challenging, he believed that with enough determination, even the most stubborn minds could be changed. Little did he know, however, that the ripple effects of his visit would continue to unfold in ways no one could have anticipated. The fallout from Marcus Langley's visit to Prestige Motors didn't stop at firings and formal apologies. It sent shockwaves through the company, forcing everyone, from corporate executives to entry-level employees, to confront uncomfortable truths about their culture and values. The dealership became a cautionary tale, dissected in boardrooms and on social media alike. But for those directly involved, the consequences were far more personal and far-reaching. Corporate headquarters wasted no time addressing the incident. Within 48 hours of Marcus's departure, top executives convened an emergency meeting to discuss the situation. Reports were filed, testimonies gathered, and decisions made. By the end of the week, sweeping changes were announced, not just for the offending dealership, but for every location under the Prestige Motors brand. Employees braced themselves for what came next, knowing full well that accountability would come swiftly and without mercy. Ryan, the arrogant salesman whose dismissive comments had gone viral, was escorted out of the building by security. His termination letter arrived via email later that evening, curt and unapologetic. "Due to your conduct reflecting poorly on the company," it read, "your employment has been terminated effective immediately." Ryan sat alone in his apartment, staring at the screen, replaying the events of the past few days in his mind. He had always prided himself on being sharp-witted and quick on his feet, traits that had earned him accolades in the high-pressure world of luxury car sales. But now those same qualities felt like liabilities. For the first time in his career, he questioned whether success justified cutting corners, or people. Greg, the manager, fared little better. Though he hadn't personally dismissed Marcus, his leadership, or lack thereof, had created an environment where such behavior could thrive. Corporate demoted him to a junior sales role, stripping him of his authority and plunging him back into the trenches he thought he'd left behind. As he stood behind the counter answering phone calls and organizing paperwork, Greg couldn't help but feel humiliated. The weight of responsibility pressed down on him, a constant reminder of how easily power could slip away when misused. Other staff members received varying degrees of punishment. Lisa, the receptionist who had initially told Marcus to wait outside, was placed on probation. Her supervisor assigned her additional training modules on customer service and empathy, along with weekly check-ins to monitor her progress. At first, Lisa resented the extra workload, viewing it as unfair given her relatively minor role in the debacle. But as she worked through the exercises, something shifted. She began to see how small actions, like dismissing someone because they didn't fit a stereotype, could snowball into larger issues. Slowly, she started making an effort to greet every customer warmly, regardless of how they looked or acted. For the rest of the team, the aftermath served as both a wake-up call and a learning opportunity. Mandatory workshops on inclusivity and professionalism became a regular part of their schedule. Role-playing scenarios challenged them to think critically about bias and judgment, while guest speakers shared stories of discrimination and resilience. Some employees groaned at the prospect of yet another training session, but others embraced it, determined to prove that they were capable of change. Outside the dealership, public reaction continued to evolve. Social media buzzed with debates about classism, privilege, and the importance of treating everyone with dignity. Customers shared their own experiences of mistreatment at various businesses, fueling discussions about systemic inequality. Journalists dug deeper into Prestige Motors' history, uncovering patterns of elitism and exclusion that stretched back years. Critics argued that the company's polished image masked deeper flaws, while defenders insisted that one bad day shouldn't define an entire organization. Amidst the chaos, Marcus Langley remained a central figure. True to his reputation as a fair but decisive leader, he refused to let the incident fade into obscurity. Instead, he used his platform to advocate for meaningful reform, not just within Prestige Motors, but across industries. In interviews and op-eds, he emphasized the need for humility, empathy, and accountability. "Success doesn't give anyone the right to look down on others," he wrote in a widely shared article. "True greatness lies in lifting people up, not tearing them down." His words resonated deeply, sparking conversations far beyond the automotive world. Teachers incorporated the story into lesson plans, using it to illustrate the dangers of prejudice. Business leaders cited it during conferences, urging colleagues to prioritize values over profits. Even competitors took note, implementing similar training programs in their own organizations. What had started as a single moment of poor judgment had grown into a movement, a catalyst for change. Back at the dealership, life slowly returned to normal. But not entirely. Sales dipped significantly in the weeks following the incident, as potential buyers hesitated to associate with a brand embroiled in controversy. Online reviews flooded platforms like Yelp and Google, many of them scathing critiques detailing negative experiences. One customer wrote, "I wouldn't trust these people to sell me a bicycle, let alone a luxury car." Another added, "If this is how they treat billionaires, I can only imagine what happens to regular folks." Corporate responded by launching a massive rebranding campaign aimed at restoring trust. New advertisements highlighted themes of inclusivity and respect, featuring diverse models and heartfelt testimonials from satisfied customers. Promotions offered steep discounts on popular models, enticing buyers to give the dealership another chance. Behind the scenes, managers implemented stricter policies to ensure incidents like the one involving Marcus never happened again. Mystery shoppers were hired to evaluate staff performance, and bonuses were tied to customer satisfaction scores rather than raw sales numbers. Despite these efforts, rebuilding the dealership's reputation proved to be an uphill battle. Trust, once broken, was difficult to repair. Employees worked tirelessly to win back clients, going above and beyond to provide exceptional service. Some succeeded, earning glowing reviews and renewed loyalty. Others struggled, weighed down by the shadow of past mistakes. Still, there was a sense of determination among the staff, a collective resolve to prove that they were better than their worst day. For Marcus, the experience reinforced his belief in the power of perspective. He had entered the dealership seeking anonymity, hoping to reconnect with the simplicity of his early days. Instead, he found himself thrust into the spotlight once again, this time as a symbol of accountability and justice. While he didn't relish the attention, he recognized its value. Every interaction, every decision carried the potential to shape perceptions and inspire change. And though the road ahead would undoubtedly be challenging, he believed that even the smallest acts of kindness could ripple outward, creating waves of positivity. As he drove his new black convertible down winding highways, Marcus reflected on the lessons learned, not just by the dealership but by society as a whole. Respect, he realized, wasn't something you gave begrudgingly or conditionally. It was a gift, freely offered and eagerly received. And though the world often seemed Divided by wealth, status, and appearances, moments like this reminded him that humanity was still capable of growth. Sometimes all it took was a little humility and a billionaire willing to wait outside to spark a transformation. Yet even as the dust settled, Marcus knew the story wasn't over. Change rarely happened overnight, and true progress required sustained effort. The real test would come months or even years down the line, when the headlines faded and the cameras stopped rolling. Would Prestige Motors stay true to its promises? Would the staff continue treating every customer with the same level of care and respect? Only time would tell. But for now, Marcus allowed himself a small smile, knowing that he had played a part in nudging the world toward a brighter, more inclusive future. Months passed since the infamous day Marcus Langley walked into Prestige Motors and left a lasting mark on everyone involved. The dealership, once synonymous with luxury and exclusivity, had become a symbol of reckoning, a place where assumptions were challenged, mistakes laid bare, and lessons learned. But as time moved forward, the true measure of change began to reveal itself, not in grand gestures or sweeping reforms, but in the small, everyday actions that reflected a deeper shift. For Lisa, the receptionist who had first dismissed Marcus, life at work felt different now. She no longer saw customers as mere transactions waiting to happen. Each person who walked through the door was greeted with warmth and sincerity, regardless of their appearance or demeanor. Whether it was a young couple nervously browsing for their first car or an elderly man looking for maintenance services, Lisa made sure they felt seen and valued. Her efforts didn't go unnoticed. Corporate recognized her improvement during one of their quarterly evaluations, praising her remarkable growth and promoting her to a customer relations specialist. It wasn't just a title, it was validation that she had turned a corner. Ryan, however, struggled to rebuild his career after being fired. Without references from Prestige Motors, finding another job in the competitive world of luxury sales proved nearly impossible. For weeks, he sent out resumes, attended interviews, and faced rejection after rejection. At first, bitterness consumed him. He blamed Greg, the staff, even Marcus himself for ruining his life. But eventually, he realized that anger wouldn't fix anything. Determined to start over, Ryan took a humbling step. He accepted a position at a mid-range car dealership, far removed from the glitz and glamour he once thrived in. Though the pay was lower and the clientele less affluent, Ryan approached his new role with a renewed mindset. He listened more than he talked, treated people fairly, and focused on building genuine connections rather than chasing commissions. Over time, he earned trust, not because of his charm but because of his authenticity. Greg, the former manager, found solace in his demotion. Stripped of his authority, he was forced to reevaluate what leadership truly meant. Working alongside junior staff taught him patience and humility, qualities he had lacked before. He became a mentor to newer employees, sharing insights gained from years of experience while acknowledging his own missteps. When corporate headquarters offered him a chance to lead a smaller dealership branch 6 months later, Greg accepted with gratitude, vowing to foster a culture of respect and inclusivity. Under his guidance, the branch flourished, not because of flashy promotions, but because customers appreciated being treated like human beings instead of walking wallets. The changes extended beyond individual employees. Corporate headquarters implemented stricter oversight across all dealerships, ensuring incidents like the one involving Marcus never happened again. Regular audits, anonymous feedback systems, and diversity training programs became standard practice. Mystery shoppers continued to evaluate staff performance, providing constructive criticism and celebrating improvements. Slowly but surely, Prestige Motors began to shed its reputation for elitism and rebuild itself as a brand rooted in integrity and empathy. Public perception followed suit. While negative reviews lingered online, positive ones started to outnumber them. Customers praised the staff for their attentiveness and professionalism, noting how different the experience felt compared to previous visits. One review stood out. "I came here expecting the same old snobbery I've encountered at other luxury dealerships. Instead, I was welcomed warmly and treated with genuine care." They even remembered my name when I returned for service. This isn't just a business, it's a community. Marcus kept tabs on the progress, not out of malice, but out of genuine interest. Every so often, he'd visit the dealership incognito, curious to see if the changes stuck. During one such visit, he struck up a conversation with Lisa, now in her new role as a customer relations specialist. She didn't recognize him at first, which amused him greatly. As they chatted, he noticed something remarkable. She spoke about her job with passion, describing how fulfilling it was to make people feel valued. When she finally realized who he was, her face flushed with embarrassment, but Marcus simply smiled and thanked her for her hard work. "You're doing exactly what this industry needs," he said sincerely. "Keep it up." His words stayed with Lisa long after he left, reinforcing her belief that change was possible, even in places resistant to it. Inspired, she shared the story with her colleagues, sparking a renewed commitment to excellence. Together, they brainstormed ways to further improve the customer experience, from personalized follow-ups to complimentary refreshments during service appointments. These small touches added up, creating an atmosphere of warmth and hospitality that set Prestige Motors apart from its competitors. Meanwhile, Marcus used his platform to amplify the broader message of the incident. He gave talks at conferences, wrote articles, and appeared on television shows, emphasizing the importance of treating everyone with dignity and respect. His advocacy extended beyond businesses, reaching schools, nonprofits, and community organizations. People listened, not just because he was a billionaire, but because his message resonated deeply. Stories poured in from individuals inspired by his example, sharing how they had challenged their own biases and embraced inclusivity in their daily lives. As the months turned into a year, the ripple effects of Marcus's visit continued to spread. Prestige Motors became a case study in business ethics courses, dissected for both its failures and successes. Other companies adopted similar initiatives, recognizing that accountability and empathy weren't optional. They were essential. Even within Marcus's own organization, employees reported feeling empowered to speak up against discriminatory behavior, knowing their voices would be heard. Yet perhaps the most profound impact was personal. For Marcus, the experience served as a reminder of his roots, a time when he too had been judged by appearances and dismissed as insignificant. It reinforced his belief that success wasn't measured by wealth or power, but by the ability to uplift others. He often thought back to the black convertible parked outside the dealership, the one that had sparked nostalgia for his early days of entrepreneurship. Driving it now, he felt a sense of gratitude, not for the car itself, but for the journey it represented. In the end, the story of Marcus Langley and Prestige Motors wasn't just about holding people accountable. It was about transformation. It showed that even the most entrenched attitudes could evolve with effort and intention. It demonstrated that respect wasn't a privilege reserved for the elite, but a universal right owed to every individual. And perhaps most importantly, it reminded everyone, employees, customers, and observers alike, that you never truly know who's standing in front of you until you take the time to see them clearly. As Marcus drove off into the sunset, the sleek, black convertible gleaming under the fading light, he allowed himself a moment of quiet satisfaction. The road ahead was still long, fraught with challenges and uncertainties. But for now, he knew one thing for certain. The world was capable of change. And sometimes all it took was a little patience, perspective, and perseverance to steer it in the right direction.